proceedings of these subcommittee meetings. So as I've been told, as I've been informed, I think the subcommittee meetings will now be included on tape, which is not a problem. You have before you, well, first of all, I'd like to welcome a new member of our committee, Mr. Mike Lutz. He was appointed to our subcommittee at the general committee meeting last Friday. Mike, we've got a good group here. I've in all candor and all honesty, we've had, with this group, achieved a real synergy. I think it's been one of those deals, and we welcome you into that, and I hope that with your addition and our additional charge that we were given Friday of developing a proposed model for the general committee, that we can do that as expeditiously as possible. You have before you the minutes from the last metrics subcommittee meeting. I'll give you just a second to go over those.
Chairman, I move the minutes be approved as presented.
I have a motion on the floor to accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
I have a second by Tim. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Okay, minutes are approved. Okay, when we last left off, we had, as reflected in your minutes, we had actually talked about we're in the process of talking about Tim's model. Tim, were you were going to dial in some additional information into that? Are you prepared to proceed with that?
What we were looking at is to confirm the 1429. I confirm that. That's good. That
is included comm center time, right?
To define what we defined Thursday was shoot time plus travel time. That's what we defined Thursday. That's what we defined Thursday. It was 90 seconds, starting the first year, 90 seconds, and then 12:59 travel time, which is 13 minutes. That was in the model.
Okay.
That's the model I presented. Remember, had the 13. I can pull it back up. But that's what we were discussing there. Is 1429. Also, I think Chief Gaddy wanted me to look at instead of the post being at Rough Edge, to move it back up to Griffith. And to tell you the truth, I hadn't had the time to do that.
Okay.
But it won't take but a second to do that, and I'll do it. But I just overlooked it. Sorry, I apologize for that. That's the only. Other than that, and I think you guys wanted me to come back with some look at some times on non-emergency. Like priority, or excuse me, we're talking about the 1429 is emergency calls, and then you wanted to talk about. I think you wanted me to talk about routine without delay calls, which we call code 2s, and then we have a routine call, which is a basic call, as you might say, or a non-emergent call, and it's a code 1. And you wanted me to speak on maybe some goals that we could look at those times and what we could do. Like I said, I just want to throw out, I looked at over some of the stuff there that we've done, and to just throw some numbers out right now that we've had Stephen run with me for a while, is some goals. Code the non-emergency response without delay. I'm trying to get on common terms.
Yeah,
that's reference to our code 2 is somewhere around 1630 if you can look at the past, this is what we had, the big stuff right here, so. And really and truly, we're looking at overall one county, one zone, okay?
This is non-emergency call, is that right?
This is non-emergent without delay. Okay? We break them down into 3 categories, and then you have your code 1, which is a routine call. Sometimes that is assistance, wellness check, different things like that would be there. And we were looking at somewhere around 1930 there in the time, a goal of 1930. As I said, all these are set as goals. I think the only one performance value is our code 3, or emergent response times, which is the 1429. Other than that, cutoff for transports, and I think we were discussed tracking of units, but that's not going to be, really and truly, that's not going to be an issue with the ABL. When that's up and running with GPS ABL, you'll be able to track units at all times.
Well, and I think what I was attempting to do is I'd like us to report the availability per unit
Okay. All right.
monthly. That's going to be just,
Okay.
that's just a reporting.
Yeah, I think it would probably coincide with reporting on the availability and then out of service. So on that, and so that's just some discussions that we can have now if you want to. Of course, I have to look at it as a total system. I know we're in here for emergency calls, but I also have to look at it, especially for the citizens on of course, with that need, especially transports, different things like that we have to take care of also.
Have a systemic impact.
Yep. And what we do now is we cut off at 5. I can, I'm thinking 5 works during the day still, and we could probably go up to 6 at night because of the reduced transfers at night. That's my recommendation. We can throw it out there and we discuss it. Okay, so also, when we that's on that out of service times. We're 14 and 11. As you were talking, we discussed. I went back and totaled our unit hour work, and if it added that up, and if we would go, I was looking at somewhere around a 10%, and that would put it down to about 1.4 units. And that would meet a 90th percentile. That, if we were down 1.4 units, we would still meet a 90% projection. I tell you the truth, when we talk about out of service units, I'm very uncomfortable with that because there's so many issues that happen in there. You have issues that that come up immediately, where you have individuals become sick. You may have a wreck. You may have, when we have wreck, we have to take trucks out of service, have people, drug tests. We have to have all that stuff done. So we're looking at a lot of that stuff. So really and truly, out of service, I think we need to. I think it's something we can work toward, and we can report. But really and truly, right now, I'm skeptical about giving you we can do it 90% of the time like that, and I don't want you coming back and going, that's.
And we talked.
You didn't meet it.
You and I probably talked about that offline.
Mm-hmm.
And my expectation. I understand the illness and things like that, but I would expect to utilize your supervisory staff to keep an ambulance going until you can call in somebody to backfill that. And so, my understanding is you were in agreement that was probably the best way to do, and I find that acceptable.
we can work, I think we can set that up as far as the out of service, and utilizing administrative personnel, not only, supervisor, myself or whatever, but it's got to be, we got to look at, because it fluctuates from time of day, who's working, how many's working. If Billy's got a pin in and I've got mid-20 up on the pin in there for 45-minute extrication or whatever, and somebody goes home sick, that, you understand? So we have to work, all that's got to be worked out there. I think it's something we can discuss and we can report on. I do.
Yeah, okay, good.
To make it, to keep us to the fire, to make sure we get as many trucks, or keep as many trucks on the road as possible.
I think we're in agreement.
Yeah.
Tim, when you do preventive maintenance, just say a normal oil change or something like that, how long do you anticipate that truck being out of service?
When we pull one out, and usually we're averaging about two down a day for some type of maintenance. Usually the whole day, we schedule for a whole day, because of that, we have different types of PM that we utilize. We have what we call PMAs and PMBs.
Tell me the difference.
PMA is a 5,000 mile service. They go in, they change the oil, of course, in the diesel. They put it up on the rack. They check suspension. They check the brakes. Of course, they check belts and fluid levels. PMBs are 10,000 mile services. Of course, they do the same thing. They go in, they check the suspension again. They also change the fuel filters. We change fuel filters in diesels every 10,000 miles. They do that. And of course, like I said, suspension, they check electrical system. And so they provide just a little bit more maintenance on that. So we try to schedule a day, because when they go into the shop, there may be, it may have bad ball joints, suspension ball joints, have to have those. Maybe an alternator's bad, well, not really alternator, but a specific part that GM doesn't carry, and they have to order it sometimes. Sometimes they had to order brake rubbers. So, stuff like that. Brakes are wore out.
Do you get them, your maintenance at the same place all the time?
We have, what we currently use now, we have three, to tell you the truth, we have two main vendors right now. We do have three. We have utilized in the city. The main vendor is a authorized GM dealership here in the county. So we utilize those. We obtain the majority of our tires, and we get them through state contract from another vendor on that. And we also use that vendor also for the minor PMs, such as just the PMAs on that. Usually our GM dealership here in the county, they do the PMBs. They do all that. So it's worked out best for us to do that. So.
But do you find on certain occasions that your PMA maintenance takes less than a day?
Yes. Oh yeah. If we can run it in there, and if they've got a mechanic technician available, they can run in there and they can have it done in 4 hours, half a day. And when we talk about days, I'm talking about an 8-hour day. Mm-hmm. Because that's what most of you shops run, 8-hour days. We do have a vendor for electrical, alternator, air conditioning stuff also. And that could be a air conditioning go out, that could be a couple of days. So it's depending on if we have our new trucks, we have box issues, or we have issues that are still remaining in warranty, and we have to ship that truck back to West Jefferson. That can take 3 or 4 days. So there's variables
right
to everything. So we try to keep them on a weekly basis. We try to keep all the trucks and ready to go. If at all possible. We have to utilize the majority. We have to utilize 4 to 5 trucks every weekend PR events, ball games, show and tells, med standbys, different things, so.
Thank you.
So basically then, with our proposed, or, with the 1411 model that we're working within, and based on the resources at hand that you got available to you now, how many, refresh my recollection, how many additional?
We currently have 18 units, 18 transport trucks.
Okay.
Okay. Really, what we like to do, and it's a standard, it's a sort of is try to meet 100%, 150% of your online trucks. And so you'll have, like, if we got 14 on any one time,
21.
we want to have 21. We want to have 7 trucks available. Right now we have 18, so you're looking at 3 more.
Well, I think we talked about adding 2 this year. And that third one would be out of the surplus fleet. Because clearly we've got financial constraints that we have to manage within.
Yeah, that's up to you guys.
I understand, but I'm just trying to make it clear that we do have financial constraints we need to manage within, but I think you've come up with a plan that works within those constraints and can provide excellent service to the entire county. And so
No, I'm appreciative of all the research and hard work that you put into it.
It's not just me, I promise you.
Steve's done a lot of work on that.
Steve's my man, I'm telling you. Like I told him yesterday, I owe him.
For you and your team.
Yes, yes.
well, I think we've seen that, we're talking about the first year
Yes.
doing the 2, and I think ongoing you've got remounts to address,
Right.
ongoing capital expense. So that's something to be expected long term. I mean, it's the nature of the business.
And as you were saying, my ultimate goal here is to get us a model that we can utilize in the county, that's obtainable for us, that serves the citizens to the best of our ability to serve them. It meets certain recommendations and certain questions that you guys, along with the fire chiefs and you as the board, have had, and so I thought we'd try to do that. But also, what I'm doing is my understanding now is it's a contract. It's a 3-year contract, but we will revisit this every year.
During the budget cycle.
And so my thing is that we can come down and try to agree upon a model that can go forward. Really and truly, we're looking, anything that we do right now, it's going to take us 15 to 18 months before we're ready to go. We can start, of course, providing data, reporting to you guys what we're doing, continuing to diminish, if you want to talk about shoot times, different things like that. Of course, how the system's growing with the ABL and stuff like that. But I think if we can come and sit down and go, hey, this year we're going to get this thing going. This is what we want to do. This is how we want to proceed. And then every year after that, I'm sure you guys are going to have questions, concerns, or if we met this goal, I know you're going to want us to do better next year.
Well, and if you look at the progress you've made in the last several months, utilizing ABL and some of your 12-hour shifts and everything, I think come next budget cycle, we'll have a good sampling of what progress is being made, and make sure, what we talked about at the beginning of this process is that we don't want you to fail, but we want you to provide the best possible service to our citizens. And I think we're on target to do that. and I think there'll be tweaking on both sides as we go down this process. Unfortunately, we do have some financial constraints that, we'd love to be able to say, you got 25 ambulances, do what you need, but that's not feasible. But you've clearly come up with a model that has enhanced the service to every citizen in the county, which is a drastic improvement. And I think we'll be, I'm looking forward to working with you.
Okay.
I mean, I'll come sit beside you again and we'll.
I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah, Mike, we have kind of ensured we sat beside each other, we bantered back and forth, and I tell you what,
About having to sit between them.
yeah, I know.
He usually saves me a seat. Good to feel loved.
But it's a working relationship, and I guess that's what it kind of jokingly, because I've given some, Tim's given some, and we've come up with what we think's a good model to recommend. One of the things we ask you to do is, look at, is there anything that we need to tweak or whatever? And Billy, you were going to validate some that we're using the same numbers, and I think you pretty much said that Friday.
Correct.
So it's interesting that we had to use subcommittees because we had 5 months worth of work to do in 5 weeks. And so we broke out into groups, but one thing that's good is Billy and his committee was validating data, and we had the opportunity, because we had access to the data as well in this group. And then when the two groups started talking, the data was correct, so that puts some assurance that the data that we're working off is right.
Those were the deliverables that we had scheduled for today. The only other thing I had a note here about restocking protocols. Did we define that to everybody's satisfaction last week?
We're looking at the restocking. We've been doing that all along. I think that with me working with Curtis over there, that we could come up with some type of policy. How we're doing the restocking now is not I don't think it's the best way to do it, as far as, usually what we're doing now, they run a call, and they run a call and they go back out to the truck, and if they use the oxygen mask, they're grabbing an oxygen mask or something like that. I need a better way to track all of that stuff. We've got in place some stuff that's been approved in this year's budget with the UCAPIT system and stuff. So I'm really looking at some type of electronic format that we could utilize to provide, or even just brainstorming right now, providing supervisors that they can return that equipment from site. Because sometimes I'm not saying I wouldn't do the same thing, but you have the first responder on scene that maybe failed to get a nasal cannula the last 2 or 3 times, and all of a sudden, well, here's the truck now. I remember now, and they go, and not only are they grabbing they're receiving the equipment that they just used, they're also taking 5 or 6 additional that they've used before. And all of a sudden, then you have a truck that may need to have to go back in for restocking because all of their equipment's.
I guess
But I think that's something really, a restocking program or something. That's something we can work with.
that's administrative.
Yeah, I don't think that's
There's actually
Excel
language in the
file
agreement
already.
that the commissioners just approved on restocking that addresses that at a high level. So I don't think would probably be additional language, because that doesn't really fall into the 2 areas, which is really the only thing that's up for discussion is response times and then performance goals. And I think it is important, just from a contractor relationship, our expectation is to have probably about 4 performance goals in the contract. I think if you have more than that, you have too many, and we base everything off industry average. If you look at industry, it's typically what you have is about 4 performance goals. At the same time, within a monthly report, which we'll be sending to Mr. Teague and meeting with him every month, there can be a whole plethora of metrics that we report back to the county. But as far as the contract goes, I really only see about 4 performance goals in the contract, and then the rest would be really reporting metrics to Mr. T, some quality measures as well as just some operational metrics as well.
Well, then that's probably something exactly we need to identify which 4 we're going to address, and we probably need to do that by Thursday. But you made a statement that concerns me a little bit, and Billy, you represent the fire departments. I don't think they should be coming taking off your truck because they're missing some. That's an administrative thing that because I know that, and I've been doing this research for over 2 years, and I know that some of your supervisors go around and stock the vehicles. And if that's the case, I ask that if they need to restock a fire department or something like that, or even if you drop it in the mail, but I don't think they should be taking it off your truck, because you may go to the hospital, make a run to the hospital, and on the way back you get pulled on another call and you don't have what you need. That's I don't think that's a smart thing to do.
I think that's something we can work out. That's something on my part, and as far as with Mr. Teague
and the reason I brought it up is because in the September agreement it talked like 15 months. I don't think that kind of administrative process should take that long. I mean, that ought to be something we can do relatively quickly. By, I know you've got administrative people that focus on that sort of thing. So I'd just ask you to expedite that so we can make sure fire departments have what they need, and they don't steal from. I don't mean steal. That's take it off your truck.
Go shopping.
And I know it's all intended positive, but I'm just trying to look further ahead.
Yeah, that's no problem. We can, like I said, we've been doing that for years. That's just some of the issues sometimes we run across. We can do that. No problem. I don't think we've really had any issues with that.
All right, I think that Mr. Luke's probably summarized it much more succinctly than I did. That was going to be my next point, is that we're satisfied, I think, with the model that we're proposing to the board. We're satisfied with the capabilities and what we believe it will deliver to the citizens. With regard to the performance goals, I think that we probably need to drill down on those. Am I being overly simplistic when I go back to our 90-second shoot time at that level as a performance goal? That's kind of where I'd like to steer conversation at this point in time. Let's go ahead and start trying to map out some of those performance goals.
Can I ask you a question then?
Yes.
When you're going to propose the model and the metrics, which is going to be the priority? Meaning, one of them has to give at some point, because you'll have staffing challenges, or you'll have to move up folks and move them around. I heard from Mike, contract's gonna have 4 measures in it. 4 to 5 measures. You have in mind a staffing, a deployment model. Are you gonna propose, are we gonna propose in such a way that the metrics are the thing, that the response time is the primary goal, with the hope that they can staff the way, or that they can deploy the way that you envisioned it on the mapping? Or is it the other way around, that they have to deploy the way it's put on the map, and if that impacts performance goals, then it does? Do you see? Does the question make sense?
I think that because we started off with the assumption there was not going to be any deal breakers for the contract, I guess you'd say, accountability. The response time is that sole goal. I think that's reasonable. The other goals that we're looking at are that make up that greater goal. And so therefore we'll identify, your response time includes your shoot time and your travel time, right?
Correct.
So, if we have a goal for shoot time, I think that's very appropriate, because the shoot time is where they can make up the most time and not be a health or safety risk to themselves or the public. making it up and driving is not a good way to do it. So I think, building those. Now, one of the things you mentioned, and Mike and I have talked about this, when we're talking about staffing for the vehicles and things like that, I personally see that as a management responsibility. And, he's going to have to do, keep on target, and sometimes, like you said, somebody's going to call in sick, or there's going to be something that the ambulance is taken out of service, whatever. But, management has to make sure they keep as many ambulances available to achieve that goal. And so I think, we have to work this as a group, but one of my recommendations is have a staffing goal. And we were talking about, basically 90% is what you're saying, and that we do that reporting. But everything builds up to that response time.
Right, and the reason I ask, and I appreciate you indulging me to ask the question.
No problem.
But, because in my mind, the way I see it is that 1429 is the time. And we put that in the agreement, in the contract, as part of the group that's going to be enforcing the contract. When Curtis is going to be working on performance measures, I'll be looking at the finances of it all the time. That where the hammer gets involved, or where the point where we have any kind of problems in the contract, to me, get to be in those response time numbers. Versus, if we say that the goal is 90% staffing, but if you're 80% staffing, but you're still achieving your response time goals, then I'm like you, I kind of see that as a management issue. You want to achieve the 90, that's good because that's a good business practice. However, if you can't achieve the 90, as long as you achieve enough to cover 1429, then I think we don't have an issue in our contract. That's just management's not achieving something we'd like to see them do. And the same thing with the deployment. If they're achieving 1429 universally through the county at the benchmark we want, then if they're not deployed exactly as we would want them to be because of other issues or something going on, then I don't see that as an issue as much as if they were breaching that 1429 number, that response time metric. And then I would say, we have an issue with your deployment. Does that kind of make sense? So I'm echoing and agreeing with what you're saying is, I think all these other goals are good, but I think you need to drill down and hone in those metrics, because that's what's going to be your, for lack of a better, benchmark in the contract to say good or bad, performing or non-performing. So,
I'll tell you, this is my view, trying to answer your question. Based on the comments that have been made in the earlier meetings, what I really think that the goal is, and let me preface it with saying, I think, the terminology that had been talked about previously, before this group started meeting, dealt with dynamic and static and all those type terms. I really think at this point we have to slide those off the table, and we're looking at, from the discussion, basically a deployment model where units are dispersed around the county, and whenever a unit is tied up on call, other units are moved up to help cover that area. Not a static nor a dynamic quote unquote deployment anymore, but the number of units and things of that nature that have been discussed are put in place with the goal of being able to maintain the response time, with the secondary goal of having enough units available to provide effective emergency medical service for the citizens of the county. So I don't really think that it's so much everything is being dictated to particular units having to be at a particular location all the time. I think it's to serve the geographical areas of the county and to maintain their response time. I don't know if
no, that's
if
it.
that helps to clarify.
I'm trying to clarify kind of in my mind where we're at prioritization wise, because let's see, you have competing priorities at that point. If you're dictating basing stations as bases and you're dictating response times, and that was always my big question. And it's kind of listening to is I want to be sure.
Yeah.
Now the response times are the things. The rest of it can be goals, but there needs to be flexibility enough for EMS to do what they need to do, obviously within the bounds of whatever they're supposed to do.
They've been doing that all along.
Yeah.
Correct.
And I just want to ensure that we allow them to do that.
And we're not tying their hands.
Yeah,
I
correct.
mean,
And what we're talking about, especially when we're talking about the deployment model we're at, we do not have, and I just want to be specific on this, is we really don't have stations or bases This is the deployment locations that we're going to utilize for essentially some of the concerns that the committee had initially was crew comfort and stuff like that instead of a McDonald's parking lot. Okay, but that's really the only thing, and we're going to utilize that as much as possible. And I think what we need to keep in tune is the response time, that 1429. And I think all of us have the understanding that that's going to have to be my responsibility to manage that, to assure that we keep that at the 90th percentile or up. And so that's
basically
it.
saying the same thing. I guess to summarize it is, as it's been discussed, I think Tim and I feel comfortable that this model gives us the flexibility we need to best serve the community and meet the response time of 1429.
Well, I think that we need to acknowledge too, I think our volunteer fire departments have stepped up. They're playing a major part in us being able to financially afford this. It's because some of the stations we're paying for right now, we won't have to, not stations, but the houses
Right.
that we're using, we won't have to do that. So that'll contribute to managing the cost of the thing. But I commend the volunteer fire departments for stepping up and trying to participate and provide comfort stations for them.
You raised one question because did you hear back from Rob?
I have not.
He was supposed to send out, I know he had sent it to me to proof, and he sent out to the fire departments. Have you?
I was going to mention that.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, exactly. But, there are, Rob has gotten some feedback. One of the things that we charged Rob with when he was at our last meeting was to go back to the fire chiefs and to elicit their thoughts with regard to some of the deployment locations. And he did put that out there. And there are, it's fair to say that there are some legitimate concerns within the volunteer fire department, some of the volunteer fire departments themselves, over things like just housekeeping things, access to certain areas of the, there are logistic issues
Right.
that they would be concerned about with regard to this. Is that a fair statement, Billy, based on our view?
But I think most of the stations we talk about primarily in this, the chiefs were here to be able to address their ability for those individual stations. We're here to be able to address the availability of working with us. So it really makes a statement of the unity of this county, and I appreciate it.
Since we had mentioned the comfort stations, the one thing I just do want to mention, I noticed in the last meeting, it appears that there was a motion taken and approved for the 90-second shoot times 90% of the time with the third-year benchmark of 60 seconds. Without a doubt, I think we all feel comfortable with 90 seconds. And we are absolutely committed to improving that year over year. Nothing would make me happier. The first year we come in at 80. I do have concerns because we don't know how this new model with this comfort stations is going to address shoot times. Having a third-year goal of 60, most definitely, we want to have an aggressive goal, but it's probably not appropriate to put something like that in the contract for the third year because it is a different model. And I think people recognize the previous proposal that was discussed in September was different, and there's a checks and balances, you have a give and take on that, but when you're on the street corner, you're going to have better response, better shoot times. I think the concern is if we are going to have potential bases, although I think we want them moving around and not potentially at the bases, we have to really measure that over time to see how that's going to affect our shoot times. Our commitment most definitely is to have the very top decile shoot times in the state. That's what we want to achieve. But I am a little bit concerned having it the third year at 60 seconds when we don't really quite know how this model will affect the shoot times. Does that mean we're not going to shoot for it? No. But having it in a contract is probably something I wouldn't feel comfortable with.
I think we'll know by next June.
I agree.
And so, you know, we can modify
It's gonna be reviewed each
whichever
year,
way,
so-
yeah,
Yeah.
we can modify whichever way. If we put it at 80 the third year and you're running 60 now, then yeah, we can modify that. Like I said, there's no intent to have y'all fail, but I do want to push, you and I have had this conversation, Mike does not like to miss goals. And we really want to play that for the county's benefit.
Well, I don't like to miss goals, but I also like to overachieve.
Oh, I
too.
understand.
So,
I understand.
Obviously, if we, this committee, the executive committee said, here too, we want to be at 80 seconds. At the end of the first year, we're at 78. We're not going to put it 80 seconds. We're going to say, hey, I think we can do 72 seconds. Let's push ourselves. So, I mean, I think we are all absolutely committed to doing the very best thing for the county. I just want to be careful on, what we put out there.
I think along with this committee, that's been one of the sort of the sore points between all of us, especially on my side, because you can ask all of them. I've always said, hey, we'll do 90 seconds 90% of the time.
Yeah.
And that's what we're held to, the state status. I think we've had this discussion, and what you saw in the notes is, we can look at 60 seconds. Or I said, we can look or whatever, but right now, my performance goal is 90 seconds 90% of the time. And I think everybody can agree on my stance on that.
Yeah, I guess I was just surprised by the motion, and it looked like everyone voted in favor by the third year, 60 seconds. But-
I think we have to get such
As
high-
a benchmark.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. I think that we, if nothing else, we wanted to include a benchmark of some sort. And that was reasonable, and but the discussion did take place of evaluation throughout the contract, that if it turned out that it was not gonna be something that you could reasonably achieve, that we would modify that.
After the first year, I believe you'll have a good analysis of how it's gonna work, and after the second year, you ought to have a better analysis. And if it can be met at 60, then that's great, but if it can't, then maybe we have to change it. But I think it would be wise to keep it in there and look at it with the anticipation of hoping to achieve it, whether you can or not. I don't think your contract's gonna be excluded dollar-wise because you can't mix like the baseball player that hits 35 home runs a year, but for 2 years he didn't hit but 30. I mean, he's not gonna be penalized because he didn't hit 35. So I think it's good to have it in there. It just keeps it in the back of your mind of trying to achieve something beyond expectations. And I think that's a good, I just think it's a good thing. Not disagreeing with you totally, but,
I just don't think hope's a strategy, so I prefer to have something that and I don't, obviously, if the first year our goal is 90 seconds, we're gonna try to achieve 60. And that's just the way we're gonna do it. But to have it as a strict benchmark, that's where the
So like I said, we can.
I'm gonna try to do better than 90.
We're gonna do the very best. Yeah. Nothing would make me happier when Tim and all the dedicated teammates of EMS come back and say, you guys challenged us, look at what we did.
Yeah.
And
It's pride.
That's what I expect. I think you guys are gonna be really impressed with what they can do.
So, performance goals.
That's-
I think everybody's, said that one of our performance goals is shoot times.
Mhm.
And so that's, maybe year one is 90 percent of the time. I'll throw this out too. This is one of my goals that we continuously have these goals, and we strive to better ourselves at it. When I had this showed you the slide Thursday, and for the demand model, the demand on our system, not really versus call volume, but the demand. Another one of our goals is, of course, hospital turnaround times. That's a goal for us. That is, when we arrive at the hospital, we want that truck to be at the hospital, patient reported, PCR completed, at least to where they can hand off a report to the facility, and then back in service in 30 minutes.
Well, and that's one I see as an exposure to you, because you cannot control the hospital. The hospital, whatever happened, you know, we got 2 people in the area that they're testing for Ebola. You know, you don't know what you're gonna run into. I see that as something, your internal goal. What I'd see as a goal more so is having that unit available. I'm more concerned that having that unit staffed 90% of the time and meeting your response time, because that's a direct impact on your response time if you spend 4 hours in Charlotte every time you go up there.
Right.
I'm being facetious, but
in what I'm saying, the hospital turnaround time, that does impact all of that.
well, I don't disagree, but
That's,
I don't want, you know, like I said, I want you to succeed, but if we set a goal out there that you cannot control, I think you've got an exposure problem. Now, Mike has more control of it than you do, but, you know.
Well, I mean, to your point, if there's 3 traumas coming in, it does create challenges, but that's more the exception than the rule. I would actually, the things that we do control, I think the hospital turnaround time, making that a benchmark that we can measure every day within EMS, I think that's actually a really good tool, because you're increasing that awareness that this is something we need to do better at.
Well, but that's the measure you talked.
It puts more aim. I mean, quite honestly, you could make the argument that actually puts, from a frequency standpoint, that has more impact on having the number of ambulances on the road than probably anything else.
But that's part of you said the goals, and then you can do a litany of reporting. I would see reporting, absolutely. But if we're gonna set goals, something that is more measurable, like the shoot time. And then I think we need to come up with 3 more that we feel is.
We're gonna use the 1429, right?
Well, that's the response time.
Right, that's gonna be one of your metrics.
That's the main metric.
Okay.
And then the goals underneath that are how things that should have a direct impact on that, so we can measure and see how we're performing.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if it necessarily has to have a direct impact on that, because ultimately it's the response time. I think it can be other things that maybe have an indirect impact, whether it's whatever's important, whether that's patient satisfaction.
Yeah, I think that's been
whether other
included in
things.
everything.
Excuse me for interrupting. I've got a big problem at work. I need to go if you don't need me.
Okay.
If there's any
Well,
questions.
before, did you have,
Tim.
again, the opportunity to report? Did you have something specifically that you wanted to share with the group, I guess is my question.
If there's something that was coming from a specific standpoint, if you needed specifics there also to show you the presentation that we would have on Friday, to give you that ahead of time, I could leave that behind or via email.
Okay.
My apologies, Billy, I should have gotten you first.
No, that's fine. I understand you got to take care of what you need to do, but this just cropped up while we were in the meeting, so it's something that I got to go address.
Okay.
Can
You got a
you
bit of
send
work.
us that report?
Yes.
Can you send us that report so we can include it in the minutes?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it'll be part of the Friday report as well.
Okay.
Okay, all right, okay.
So-
Thank you, I
Thank you.
apologize.
No problem. It was in fine, had that not, it's prepped up.
I understand.
Chief, do you have the report with you that we can look at as we're talking about?
It probably shouldn't be part of the minutes if we don't look at it. And we can just wait for Friday. So, I mean, I don't think we can put it in the minutes if we don't look at the report.
The key thing here is that we were going to pull out of this as showing you the differences between the state times and the EMS's time, or I'm sorry, CCOM's times. And the key being that, with the exception of one state data point, which was out by over 50%, and we excluded it from it's included in the numbers so that you can see why we excluded it from a differences perspective. We did not include that information. Everything is within the worst case being a 4-minute difference between the state and CCOM. And the state being looking at anywhere from 10 to 12,000 calls versus CCOM's being around 5,000. And there's basis behind how those numbers came to be. The key, again, being whether it's 5 or 10,000, 4 minutes out of was in the overall from dispatch to available what you're looking at an hour and a half. I mean, 4 minutes delta out of that is marginal at best. So they correlate very closely. I think it's in everybody's best interest to use both times to, one, verify that the state's correct, but it gives CCOM the ability to back those times up and give us confidence that we need. So if you see those big differences, then you can rely on their numbers as well. But I think both should be looked at anytime we're doing anything as a check and balance.
Okay.
So I do have one printed copy that is, if you want to leave it behind, it's not in color, so it's going to be a little difficult to see. I was printer challenged this morning, but I can leave that behind if you like.
Okay, all right, that'd be great.
And we'll have a Larry, I couldn't think of his name, sorry, provided me a little bit more information, that'll be included.
That guy.
That gentleman over there. So I'll,
Thank you, Bill.
absolutely.
First, can have that first opportunity, can you, at the break, take a break here in just a few minutes and have that credited and we can distribute that? Sure can. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
If there's, shoot me an email if there's any questions you have.
Yes,
And
sir.
I can address those, or Larry can address them instead as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Lincoln, I'm sorry.
That's
My
okay.
apologies.
Going back to the point, with regard to the hospital turnaround time, though, would that not be going back to what Mike said, would that not be a meaningful influence on their system system capacity? Well, not system capacity, what's the resource availability?
What we've tried to do in the past, especially in very important are shoot times, very, very important. Also, we go back and reflect on what the state, a lot of the state, really and truly, they don't have a lot of requirements or benchmarks as in reporting stuff, but it is, they deem it very important. Shoot times are. If you look at the toolkit, you'll see it.
Mm-hmm.
And also, hospital times. Out at hospital is very important because, like you said, it's as you were saying, also with unit availability as far as staffing, also unit availability of the turnaround times for that hospital transfer.
I agree.
It's
going to affect your cutoffs, your 5 and 6
right, because
cutoffs that you, so
We-
it's a major, there's no doubt about it. But my concern is setting a goal that when there's such a major influence that you cannot control.
right. And we report, and really and truly it's a goal that we continuously look at and report on betwixt ourselves. And we have, and a lot of times that identifies a lot of areas. If you're saying like the hospital, if it's an issue with a hospital, I can, in the past, that's what we did. We've approached the ERs, we've approached Waxhaw, different areas and go, hey, look, this is affecting this and we got to get these trucks back in service. It's also affected, that we've looked at that is that, a lot of times when we get in, you talk about the transfer of different things, the patient's not ready. We give them, the facility where we go, you get 15 minutes. We walk in there and they're not ready, we give them about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, they're not ready. We're back in service and they have to call us when they're ready. So, we do a lot of that. We do a lot of the reporting like that, but it's very important. The hospital turnarounds is very important that we hold not only when the crews, the shoot time, but a lot of times, when they get to hospitals too. You go to CMC Main, even as busy as CMC Union's getting now, you come in and there's 4 or 5 units there at one time. A lot of times they have the opportunity that they can start talking, and eventually all of a sudden when they start carrying on conversations, it's 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It's so important to us that we have, CCOM has it as a alert on their their
watchdog
system.
alert.
They have a watchdog, it's so important to us, they have a watchdog alert that we go, unit such and such, you've been out 30 minutes. They have to provide justification or they're checking 10.
So, I mean, I guess as the
It's-
operator, I mean,
Yes.
I appreciate the concern, but I think as the operator, we feel comfortable that internally, that's important to us, where we can measure that and affect change if issues arise.
That was gonna be my follow-up question is, I mean, if they're comfortable taking that on as a metric, then that's a, because I agree with Tim, you know, it's human nature, and I can understand their, having, from the other side, as a firefighter, and being in the ED and watching everything when their desire to get that unit back into service.
That's true. It's important.
As quickly as possible, so.
The quicker you can leave the hospital, the quicker you can be in service.
Quicker you can run another call.
So do we want to formally adopt that as one of our goals, or that?
I think we need to put it on the list, and then let's look at our list and come
Pare
up
it
with
down.
4, pare it down. We can do that by next Thursday.
Also, I think it's a good, and you guys, I mean, you throw some out, but I think it's a good indicator to you as a board of commissioners, also as CMC union, and also with us, is patient satisfaction. You gotta have patient satisfaction. We can do all this stuff, and if we're nasty and mean to people and everything else, we can meet all these times, and we're meeting these times because we're grabbing them and slinging them in a truck or something. But if our patient satisfaction's out at the bottom, I think that's a measurable, something that we need to measure
I think you're
there.
right.
Now, is that as differentiated from quality of service, patient satisfaction as a separate?
So I think in the quality side, in the agreement, we were looking at other true quality metrics, not necessarily, we didn't roll patient satisfaction into
Yeah.
that.
That was a specific, just measurement, is standalone goal there.
All right.
I think that needs to be included in any type of public service. Customer satisfaction.
Yeah.
I think that's what everybody's, anything you do now in business, I'd say.
Well, the people that don't make it can't serve it. Just teasing. You know, if you get me to the hospital, that's 5, I'm gonna probably be pretty happy.
Right, yeah.
So,
I think that's one of them.
Tim, do you have any form of indications now what your patient satisfaction is?
Yes, sir. We provide our billing company, EMS randomly sends out specifically different types of calls, cardiac, respiratory, different things, and they randomly, and it's sent out with the bill, your bill that you get, and we're substantially very good in the 90% patient satisfaction. Of course, some of them you're not gonna, some of them, if you charge them, you know, because you charge them, they're gonna give you a,
Just to clarify, in Exhibit A of the agreement that was just approved by the commissioners, customer and patient satisfaction
is in there, so we've already
It's
got,
already there.
we got, I think we had 2, don't
Curtis,
we?
what's the first one on top of the page? Is it paramedic skill retention?
Paramedic skill retention is the first thing under performance goals that is part of the agreement. Then customer and patient satisfaction. And whenever we take a break, I'll make a copy of these also so everybody has them in here. The third item is community involvement, community paramedic program. Also is listed. And then basically the definition of cancel calls.
So the thinking of adding those two in one, just from a paramedic skill retention, so everyone feels comfortable that the EMS teammates are out there, are competent, they're doing a good job. We have, I mean, it's a pretty extensive skills checklist that we give each year. We have percentages for that. And then community involvement, one of the things that came out initially out of the study, and really with the meetings with a lot of the fire chiefs, was that they wanted EMS out there more in the community, doing more community education, partnering with other organizations. So that was the other reason we put it in the contract, was just approved, was paramedic skill retention, and then community involvement. But both of those were things that had come up over the last 2 years as areas that really the firefighters in the county wanted us to maybe step up a little bit. Not necessarily the skill retention step up, but report that out.
Well, and it's, you know, and I understand completely, and I think that's a good thing.
Take 10.
Yeah, at this point in time, let's go ahead and take 10. Let's be back at 10:15. Give everybody a chance to take care of any personal matters. Curtis is going to make our copies, and we'll go from there. So see you back at 10:15. Now,
The nice thing about it, when commissioners meet, we have to schedule one of the restrooms because you can't get two in there at one time.
oh, really? Yeah, I have to do it. Oh, now here's, that's going to be my next question regarding that.